Hi everybody, welcome along to another author event with Braille House and Bookshop 507. Today we're joined by Emma Gaulton. Welcome.
Hi.
It's fantastic to have you. And Emma's the author of a book that's just come out called Our Tom. So can you tell us a little bit about Our Tom?
Well, I'm a very keen genealogist. So I was doing a lot of family history research and all that, and I found that 3 of my great uncles had been in the First World War. And through that, I was like, oh, this is quite interesting, and I've always enjoyed reading stuff about the First World War anyway. So when I found that my great uncle Tom was actually posted to Egypt and Palestine, I was like, wow, that's so totally different to them ending up in France.
Yeah.
So from a genealogy perspective, I actually decided to research him more, find out where he went, what he did. And unfortunately, because of World War II, a lot of the First World War records were destroyed. So it was a matter of just trying to find as much as I could about what regiment he was in and stuff like that. So which I was able to do, and I've been able to sort of incorporate some of that into my fictionalized story about my great uncle Tom.
Yeah, nice. And just on that, is it difficult to combine history with fiction?
It can be. It depends on how you do it. I mean, if you want one which is really embedded in the history, then yes, it takes a lot of research and a lot of work to do that. With my one, I was just wanting to tell a story of my great uncle, and telling a story about an actual person is also hard because you look at it in terms of, oh, what will the descendants think?
That's you.
Luckily in my case, he actually didn't have any descendants.
Oh.
He was an unmarried man. So his niece was my grandmother. So I was able to have a family perspective from it, but I didn't have to totally worry about what his family would be thinking, because his family, he had no one descending him. So it was just looking basically from the sides.
Yeah, right. And how much research did you do?
A fair bit. I've got quite a few books. That bookshelf behind me is basically my research books from various different things. But yeah, I've had to research some of the medical situations in World War I. I needed to know sort of movements, what they did, what type of equipment they used. Luckily, I had a friend in a writers group who was actually ex-military, so he was able to read my book and tell me if it sounded military correct, which it was, thankfully. Yeah. So, and obviously I'm a female and I'm writing from a male perspective, so it's also good to take for him to tell me whether or not a man would say certain things a certain way, which was also a very good help for me too.
And you must have come across some interesting stories. How did you decide what to put in and what to leave out? And did you come across any of the really surprising stories that stood out?
Not in this particular case, not hugely surprising stories, but what stories I did find, in the original draft, I put everything in. And then when I was editing, I went, oh, okay, I don't actually need that story. It's not really relevant to the whole thing. So I trimmed down a lot. Like I originally had another character in there, which sort of was there at the beginning, but sort of disappeared. And I realized, well, why is she there? I don't need her. So I cut her out completely.
Yeah.
And I had to make sure I took all the little references to her out as well.
Yeah, right. And just there are a lot of love stories come from war. Do you think it's the shared experience going through the same thing at the same time that not a lot of other people would understand?
Yeah, it's that. I think it's shared experiences, the fear of loss. the fear of not taking an opportunity when you can. So I think with my story, my character Ella, she had a fear of that. I think I'm put in there of taking those opportunities. So in certain aspects, but yeah, so it was a matter of just working it in. And I think with war and romance, it's they go hand in hand. It's just what war does, really.
Yeah. And that taking the chances when they're presented is obviously one message. What other messages do you think people will get from reading our Tom?
I don't know. It's a hard one. That's a hard question, because with all stories, every person is different. So some people might read this story and say, "Oh my God, it's about mateship and it's about friendship and relying on each other and caring for each other." Another person might come back and say, "Oh well, that was such a really wonderful love story. It was just brilliant," And I mean, there's aspects of the story that are relevant today as well, like what people have to deal with, love and loss. And the stresses that life can put onto you.
Yeah. And do you think it's important to tell these stories today? Like, there's a message for the world that we live in now?
I think all stories, even science fiction stories, all have a message for today, whether or not it's about love or about relationships, or it's about technology taking over the world type thing.
That's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things where I think, depending on where the reader is when they come into reading this book or any book, will depend on how they take it away, what messages they take away with it.
Yeah, right. And what other works have you written?
This is actually my first novel.
No, yep.
I have written a short story, which is in an anthology. That was with another writers group that I'm part of, or was part of. But I've sort of written a first and last chapter of a episodic book through my current writers group. But as another book, I haven't actually written one. I'm currently researching two.
Yeah. Once you get going, yeah.
Yeah, and the problem is I can't decide which one to actually write yet. So that's why I'm kind of researching too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nice. And the writers group, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I live in Port Macquarie, and the writers group, there's two writers groups here in Port. I'm currently with the Fellowship of Australian Writers in Port Macquarie, and there's another one called Port Writers, which is quite good, having two. The fellowship is a very big organisation. There's lots of writers groups throughout Australia who are linked to the fellowship, and it's just been able to talk to like-minded people and been able to bounce ideas off at each other. And we might have a writing exercise in our little meetings, and I might go, "Oh, actually that would be," that would be really great, and you twist it and you turn it, and you might end up using it as part of a story, which is what I actually did with a short story I wrote. I started it off in my meeting and then continued it on.
Well, and for any budding writers, so you're published now, a beautiful novel. Any advice for any budding writers or people that are just beginning?
Well, lots of people don't like getting critiques, like being told the bad things. Well, I was always telling people, tell me the bad things. I want to know the bad things, because if I don't know the bad things, I don't learn. So not to take the critiques to heart, take the critiques as they are. They're trying to teach you.
Yeah, nice.
And that's probably what I would say to most people, that don't get upset if someone critiques. That's their opinion, and you can take their opinion with a grain of salt if you don't like it.
Yeah.
But my one thing is, if you get multiple critiques and multiple people say the same thing, there is an error. There is something wrong.
Yeah.
So if you get one critique saying, "Oh, I didn't like that bit," and that's the only one, you can put it aside and keep hold of it just in case.
Yep.
When later down the track you can just go, "Oh, actually, you know what? They were right."
Yeah. And just on that, quite often cover art is quite you know, a difficult choice to make. Can you show us the cover of our Tom? And it's a little bit easier, I guess, because it's him.
Yeah.
But,
Well, you'd think, but hopefully it's okay. That's Tom there.
yep.
And that's the cover. The only image I had was, well, and I didn't realize I had it at the time. My cousin in Canada has the family album, and I got her through my family history to send me a whole lot of images, and there was loads of images and that picture of Tom, which, like I said, I didn't know. And when I was doing my family research, I was in contact with a library in Derbyshire called New Mills Library, and the lady there, who was absolutely fantastic, she actually found some excuse me, newspaper articles, and in one of these newspaper articles there was a picture, and you couldn't really see the picture because it just bad quality, but I suddenly realized I actually had that picture.
Wow.
And the reason I knew was in the cover of the book he's actually wearing a uniform, but in the actual picture he's wearing a suit.
Oh.
So I could tell by his little handkerchief that's sticking out of his pocket that this was my great uncle Tom. So with the cover image, I had to ask the designer to cut the head off one image and put it onto a picture of a uniform.
Yep. Nice.
And then change the background slightly because the background wasn't very good.
Yeah, right. Amazing.
But,
and where can people buy your books?
It's been published through a self-publishing company called Ex Libris, which is XLIBRIS. You can buy it through there. You can also get it via Amazon.
Yep.
And if you're in the Port Macquarie area, you can also buy it from Bookface, which is a local bookshop who are happy to promote local authors, which is really fantastic.
Excellent. So there you go, everybody. Pop out to Amazon, or if you're in Port Macquarie, go to Bookface and get a copy of Our Tom. Amazing story. And thank you so much for your time this morning, Emma. We really appreciate it. Do you have any final messages for the people listening, watching?
Well, I hope they enjoy the book. I'd be more than happy for them to write reviews on Amazon for me, and that would be wonderful. And if you're a writer, just keep at it. You'll get there eventually.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again so much for your time. And if you're ever in Brisbane, we hope to see you at Braille House and Bookshop 507.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Thank you.
Beautiful. All right. See you later.
Okay,
Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.